You're now listening to All Hogs Sports, covering all Arkansas Razorback sports, such as football, basketball, baseball, and much more. Now, here's your host for today's show, Sam Stimson.
The Hogs are going bowling in Florida. In case you didn't know, they take on Penn State on January 1st this Saturday on ESPN2 at 11 a.m. in Tampa, Florida. They play at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers Stadium, Raymond James Stadium. There's going to be some nice weather down there, 76 degrees and partly cloudy. Can't ask for much better down there. Now, starting it off with bowl season comes a lot of opt-outs, and teams that have a lot of NFL prospects and talent will have a high amount of opt-outs, and Penn State has a lot of NFL talent, so they have 6 opt-outs. Their first opt-out is wide receiver Jahan Dotson. Dotson has 91 catches for 1,182 yards and 12 touchdowns. That's a huge loss for them. Now, on the defensive side, defensive tackle Derek Tangelo, he has opted out. He's got 2 fumbles, and he's 6th on the team in tackles for loss. All Big Ten safety Jaquan Brisker has opted out. He had 63 total tackles for 36 solos and then 2 interceptions. And this is where Penn State is hurting a lot at linebacker. Linebacker Ellis Brooks and Brandon Smith have both opted out of the bowl game. Brooks had 100 total tackles on the season with 54 solo tackles. Brandon Smith had 81 total tackles on the season with 45 solo tackles. They combined for 99 solo tackles and 181 total tackles and 3 sacks. Also on the defensive side, defensive end Arnold Ibakati opted out. He's got 62 total tackles with 9.5 tackles for a loss and 2 forced fumbles. This is an opt-out for Penn State because he's still down there, but left tackle Rasheed Walker is injured for this one, hurting the Penn State offense. Now the offense for Penn State averages 26.1 points per game and 274.4 passing yards per game. This style of Penn State, they play very physical type of play up front. They use a lot of fullbacks and tight end sets. They play under center. It aims to be explosive, though it hasn't been that way all season, especially when Clifford was injured. They run a lot of different plays, though, and the passing game has been strong for Penn State because they had Dotson, but we'll see it change in this bowl game a little bit. But with any Big Ten team, they play really physical up front, utilize tight ends, fullbacks, option plays at times with those guys, too, is something to watch out for. And then they aim to be explosive as well, especially with Dotson, but, with him opting out, it'll be interesting to see how Penn State changes up. Now, Penn State quarterback Sean Clifford, he's coming back next season for them. He's got 2,912 yards, 62.4 completion percentage, and 7.4 average yards per attempt. 20 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. He's a solid quarterback. He's really thrived in their offensive coordinator, Urich's system. It's helped him a lot this season, and he's coming back, taking his COVID year from last year, and bringing his talent back to Penn State. This is not like a guy who, is like Bryce Young type caliber, but he's probably one of the better quarterbacks in the Big Ten, and he will bring a fight to an Arkansas secondary who's got a lot of, inexperience and young guys who are going up. More on that later, though. The passing game for Penn State, wide receiver Parker Washington will likely take an uptick in reps, being the wide receiver 1. He's got 57 catches for 722 yards and 4 touchdowns as wide receiver 2 all season. I really see Keandre Lambert-Smith. I think he takes a huge step with Dotson out. He's got 31 catches for 447 yards and 2 touchdowns. This is a guy that James Franklin and his staff have always wanted to succeed in, ideally getting a huge role for next season, along with Malik. He's got 3 catches on the season, but his role has gotten big, and he got a huge catch in the Rutgers game for a touchdown. And I talked about tight ends earlier on Penn State. They've got Brenton Strange, who has 19 catches for 226 yards, and Theo Johnson has 19 catches for 213 yards. A lot of Big Ten teams run the ball, a ton. Penn State is really not like that. They only average 106.6 rushing yards per game, which is pretty low for a team out of that conference. Their leading rushers are Kevon Lee. He's got 104 attempts for 495 yards. Noah Kane, who has 101 attempts for 322 yards. Compare that to Arkansas's rushing game real quick. Arkansas's rushing game has guys who are all over their 395 mark. No Canes at 322. Arkansas, I'll talk about it more later, but they might have multiple guys rushing for 4,000, 5,000 yards this season. It's really awesome to see. Penn State, though, only averages 3.1 yards per carry and doesn't have the best rushing attack. Their offensive line, they have all but one starter, the guy I talked about earlier. They have a lot of talented prospects on this line. I think they're best in pass protection, as you can see. Yards per attempt is sitting around like 7+, but then you go to rushing, it's like 3.1. But again, Urick runs a pass primary system at Penn State. Their offense averages 380 yards total. Now, this Penn State offense goes up against an Arkansas defense who allows 24 points per game throughout the season, 271.4 yards of offensive allowed from the Arkansas defense, 156.3 rushing yards as Barry Odom uses a primarily 3-2-6 scheme. Now, opt-outs for the Razorbacks include defensive end Trey Williams. He's got 6 sacks on the season. Wide receiver Treylon Burks also opted out of the season. I'll talk more on that later, but this is as expected. He's probably top wide receiver prospect in the draft. In my opinion, you could put him at maybe 2-3 if you want to be a little harsh. Treylon Burks, incredible wide receiver. Now, on the defensive line up front, I think John Ridgway, this is going to probably be his last game as a Razorback. A transfer from Illinois State, huge up front. 29 total tackles on the season with 2 tackles for loss. He's a force inside, and I don't think the stats really do him justice on how big of an effect he has on the game. You've also got Missouri transfer Markel Utsi playing in his final game with the Hogs. Eric Gregory, he's got 24 total tackles on the season as an edge rusher. I look for him to step up probably as the first edge rusher. Tareen Carter playing from the inside. He's emerged late into the season. It's been nice to see Isaiah Nichols playing inside additionally. And then on the defensive end, so you got Zach Williams and Jashad Stewart. This unit is pretty deep. They have a 6-7 rotation, which works well with the 3-man fronts that Odom works. You will see a lot of Stewart, Nichols, even Williams at times, even though he's been seeing a good amount, just based off of when you're missing a good amount of guys due to injuries, like earlier in the season, and then now with Williams out. So we'll see different reps being taken in this one. This linebacker position, been the strength of Arkansas all season. 2 deep on the field, you have Bumper Pool. We're waiting a decision if he's coming back. But either one makes sense. He's been an incredible linebacker the last 3 years. He's got 120 total tackles on the season, 41 of those being solo tackles and 2 pass deflections. Now, the final senior games for Grant Morgan. And speaking of Grant Morgan, he won the Burlsworth Award winner. Brandon Burlsworth, legendary offensive tackle for Arkansas, former walk-on, and that's what the award's for. It's given to the nation's best college football walk-on, and Grant Morgan won that. I think it's so awesome because Morgan, he really demonstrates what Burlsworth Award and Arkansas football means. This man really demonstrates on the field with excellence and pride with that Razorback jersey on. I can't wait to see what he does, his next steps. Hayden Henry has 94 total tackles with 3 sacks. When I saw his coming back for his senior season, I didn't think he'd have the huge impact that he has now, and he's the reason that, this Arkansas linebacker core is so good, because he kind of helps other people by having 3 good linebackers. You can rotate everybody. Arkansas has 3 guys over 94 total tackles because he's been able to, give other guys chances to rest, minimize injury, things like that. This unit has been very well, put together by new coach Michael Scherer. He's done a fantastic job coaching, and, you'll see it on the tackling rate has been better and pass coverage. The Arkansas secondary has allowed 215 passing yards per game. Derek Brown, first team SEC corner, second on the team in interceptions. He has 1 forced fumble recovery as well. This guy has been absolutely incredible all season. Second in the whole entire college football in interceptions, which is awesome to see. Derek Brown living up to his nickname, Lockdown. I would be shocked if he came back for another year. I do think this is the last game. He hasn't made this decision yet, though. That's just a prediction for me. I think when you're first team All-SEC, 5 interceptions, that's extremely hard to beat. NFL scouts, though, will be all over this guy if he declares or if he waits. Joe Fouché at strong safety, 66 total tackles. He's been playing really good the last few weeks. He also awaits a future decision. If I would guess, though, I think he's coming back. Miles Slusher's been playing for the injured Jalen Catalon. Jalen Catalon is returning next season. Catalon is a huge addition, preseason All-American safety, second team, and then he got injured early on in the season. Slusher's been improving the last 2 games. He got a pick. I think it was in the LSU game. He's been looking a lot better than he did earlier in the season. Greg Brooks Jr. playing at nickelback. He's been that role and been consistent for a long time. Hudson Clark should be back and healthy for this game. I still think he gets a little bit of overhate from the times last season when he got picked on. He's been holding his worth pretty decently in a lot of games this season. And, the Arkansas secondary has been struggling, and he's been a guy who's had his name called and, played better the last few weeks. Simon Blair additionally led Darius Bishop and Jaden Johnson, the true freshman. This position runs deep for Arkansas with a lot of inexperienced guys and sophomores, but I think it's the best spot to go deep because the talent deeper here I think is still better than, the other positions. I would love to see someone come out, though, as a strong cornerback 1 candidate for next season, whether that be Bishop, Clark, or really anybody, Gordon possibly off the bench. I would like to see somebody, prove their worth here in case Monteric Brown goes to the league. I think the keys for this Arkansas defense, they got to create pressure up front, and the secondary holds on to their assignments. Now for the Arkansas offense. As you know, Treylon Burks has opted out of the bowl game. Burks, a fantastic wide receiver here at Arkansas. In my opinion, I think there's a strong argument that he could go down as the best ever wide receiver at Arkansas, especially if he has a huge career in the NFL. Burks, fantastic on the catch, on the run. He's fast, and there really isn't much that he was, asked to do this year and couldn't do. He's a fantastic wide receiver and great guy as well. Now, the Arkansas passing game has averaged 223.6 yards per game, and with 1,104 yards going to Burks this season, that makes it a little easy. KJ Jefferson, though, he's the reason that I'm not really worried about the passing game. KJ Jefferson, man, he has surprised everything that you could ask for and more. He's got 3 interceptions, the second lowest number in college football, and one of those came on a Hail Mary. He's got 21 touchdowns, averaging 9.4 yards per attempt, which is a great number there. 2,578 yards as well. There's really not much that KJ Jefferson hasn't been able to do this year. When you have a quarterback like KJ Jefferson in a bowl game, with younger wide receivers, you're able to establish some chemistry and get things going for Arkansas. I love the matchup here, though, with Jefferson and the wide receivers because he's been playing with a good amount of these all season, like Tyson Morris. Tyson Morris has 21 catches for 305 yards. He rejoined the team later in bowl practice after he was dealing with a little bit of a flu issue, but he's good now. Warren Thompson as well, 18 catches for 242 yards. Slim receiver. He's really good at blocking. Transfer from Florida State. Earned a scholarship this semester. They've got Devon Warren. I like him in this bowl game, final game here at Arkansas. 6-year senior. He really didn't have the senior season that he wished to have because of his issues with his ACL tear and such. But anyway, I do expect him to get a nice game, 50 yards or so. You got Ketron Jackson Jr. additionally. And then don't forget the tight ends. Bryles has been using some tight ends in the passing game. Blake Kern, final game here at Arkansas as well, being the Outback Bowl. He's got 14 catches for 175 yards on the season. And then Trey Knox switching to tight end, which was a great move by the coaching staff. He's got 18 catches for 130 yards. Always find himself open in the middle of the field to get something from KJ. Now, Arkansas's running game is where a lot of their offense comes from. They've got 530 attempts on the season on 4.9 yards per carry, and it makes sense when you've got the running back room that Arkansas has. I wouldn't be shocked if the Hogs went with 30, 40 carries in this game. With their running back room, this is how I would do it, and I expect this to be kind of like this. My number 1 would be Dominic Johnson. He was leading the SEC in average yards per carry until he got injured and was getting reps and not getting as much as he used to. He's still averaging 5.8 yards per carry with 7 touchdowns on the season. Treylon Smith is a senior, additionally, 5.1 yards per carry. Third, I would have Rocket Sanders, 101 carries for 499 yards. And then A.J. Green, 4.7 average yards